What's up guys, so today's deck profile is going to be Fiethsing. I'm really excited for this one too because I really believe it's one of the stronger rulers in this set. None of them seem like really awful by any means, but Fiethsing does definitely stick out as like really playable, and the deck itself is actually really easy to construct. It does have a few expensive cards, but other than I think it's Melfee, everything else is actually really cheap. The deck shouldn't run too expensive, so if you guys have always wanted to kind of play like kind of tribal deck, this one's the kind of the closest thing enforceable that you might get to it other than fairies, because you do play a lot of elves in this deck. It's not like an insane amount, but I think it's like the main three and are just really good. Christy especially, Christy's insane. So starting with just the ruler, Fiethsing is very basic. She doesn't have any activate effects or anything. Her judgment cost is a total of 5 with 2 green and 3 colorless, and she has energize, of course. And then her automatic ability is whenever you play a second card per turn, she summons a 100/100 elf token. So the idea is to swarm the field with a bunch of elves and then be able to OTK your opponent. Why these elves are so good is because it lets you get kind of greedy with your stones and tap out on a lot of your stones and let's say your mana dorks, and then you still have the tokens to block the creatures that are going to be trying to now attack into your rested mana dorks, because that's typically what every mana dork's weakness was before, and it's what made like Moonbreeze elf so good because it couldn't be attacked. But now you have all those elves plus all these free attackers and blockers. And then on this side of Fiethsing, the Jailer side, it says other elves you control gain +4/+4, which is another win condition for this deck. And then whenever you play a second card each turn, you summon 2 1/1 wind elf tokens. The second effect on this side I think isn't as important. When you're deactivating for 5, it's pretty much just to win the game by pumping everything up. So I've never really used this second effect, but I mean it is better than not having it at all. So I'm really happy with that too. Essentially, normally when you play a kind of green ramp deck, the problem with the deck is always you use a bunch of mana and then you summon one big guy early on. If that big guy is dealt with, and so like if it's dealt with, you're left with nothing and you don't have anywhere to go from there, because now you have all these like little mana dorks that don't really do anything. But with Fiethsing, it's like if you summon your really big guy and they deal with it and they had to use a lot of resource to deal with it, they now have to worry about Fiethsing deactivating, pumping every single elf on the field, and then if they pump all the elves, you just start swinging for game. So that makes her really scary. And then for the colors, I'm actually playing 4, and I'm not using rulers in Moria, but I haven't really had a problem with the consistency as I'm not using too many cards from those colors. But I have 4 Gusting Skies for white-green. White's always going to be important in green because you want to use Seal of All, Wind and Light. It's the closest, probably the best counter we have, I should say, not closest to anything, but it's kind of like a Zeke's from back in the day and an Absolute Cake Zone mixed together. And then there's 3 Deepwood. Captain Hook is still one of the main win conditions in this deck, and you want to try to ramp to it as fast as you can. It's possible that if you see one of these by turn 3 and you have a Melfee on the field, you pretty much just win, so that's always really nice too. And then 3 Black Silence. The only black card I play in this deck is the Shift Alice, but I'll explain that later. This stone is literally just for that. As I've explained before though, I didn't want to go like 8/8/2 because 2 of this feels like it'd be really too little, and Alice of Shadow actually does a lot for this deck. So I'll explain why the mana curve is totally fine later on and why it doesn't really matter. But for the Resonators, I have 4 of Sacred Elf. This card is the new Elvish Priest. It's really good. Being a 2/3 that just floats for any green is just really strong. It's like a ramp card that's not too bad either, because like I said, when Fiethsing deactivates, she gives everything +4/+4 and it's an elf. So it's like later on, if you have a bunch of these, normally when you had a bunch of Elfish Priests back in the day, it wasn't really that good. But Fiethsing makes all of these really big, so you can OTK with them even in like a situation where your main win conditions are already destroyed. And then for Melfi, probably the best green card in the set, I want to say. It blows Red Riding Hood out of the water. I don't think Red's like the worst card ever, but with Zero's Magic Light being such a like big card this format, I'm really scared that if you swing with Red Riding Hood or block with it to try to get a stone, they're gonna remove it from the game with Zero's Magic Light, and then you don't get a stone, and it's like you summoned a 2-drop 4/3 that didn't even do anything. So I like Melfi a lot more. The fact that she has quick cast is infinite times better. You can just drop this. If you go turn 1 Sacred Elf, and then pass your turn, and then let's say they do something in you Wall of Wind. Turn 2, you leave 2 mana open for either Seal of Wind and Light or Melfi. And let's say you pass your turn, they don't do anything threatening enough to counter, so you drop Melfi. During your next turn, when you tap for a stone, if you have 1 Deepwood, that's 3 stones, Melfi, and Sacred Elf, and you can tap Melfi for blue and just summon Captain Hook, and your opponent has 2 stones at this point. So if they have 2 special stones, you can literally, by that early, just get rid of both of their stones, and now they're playing such a hard game trying to catch up while you have 3 stones, 2 mana dorks, a Captain Hook on the field, and they have nothing. So it is a kind of like situational combo because you're not always going to have Sacred Elf, Melfi, and Captain Hook in your hand. But I mean, that's just the earliest you can do it, but that play happens actually quite a lot. And then 3 of Tama. I wanted to play 4 of this, but I couldn't really find the room. And not to mention, sometimes, like, with the elves, because they get buffed, they're relevant, but sometimes having too many of this late game just doesn't feel as good. So I was kind of okay with just having 3. It's an amazing card. There's nothing wrong with Tama. You get to just draw when you enter the field. But I didn't really feel the need to play 4 of it. And then 4 Slayer of the Overlord Pricia. This card actually I wasn't going to run originally, but then I realized just how good it really is. This whole format is... I was thinking it was going to be bad because there's a lot of like 6/6s now, like Cheshire Cat and all those kind of new cards. But this still hits so many relevant targets. I mean, in a mirror match, you're killing their Sacred Elves or their tokens against like the Grim Jr. guy. I don't know how to say his name. I keep saying Mullivin, but there's like no V in it. But against Grim Jr., Light Cinderella is a 4/4. It's an easy destruction target too. If you pump her, you can also kill Wendy, which is really, really important. It kills so much, and like all the extra mana makes her pump effect really good. And then there's those like random situations where you would shift into the other side of this card to like crash into something and take control of it. But I think just focusing on this side is good enough. You don't really have to worry about the shift side of this card. And then 3 Alice of Light. I have it on this side because I know a lot of people kind of coming to the channel right now are going to be new players, and so I didn't want to confuse anyone. A shift card must be on the side that it shows the bold shift and like the cost for it. So you have to play it on, it has to be in your deck or graveyard or hand on this side. But when you play a shift card, you can pay the cost of the other side and just summon it on the other side instead of first summoning it like this and then playing the shift cost. So you can do both. Just to clarify, you can summon this card, gain the life, and give everything 200 defense, and then at any point during your turn when there's nothing happening, just like during time you could play a spell chant pretty much without quick cast, you can pay the shift cost and flip this over to the other side, and so you would gain like the other effect plus this effect during 2 different turns, or if you pay 6 in 1 turn. But you can literally, if this card is in your hand on this side, you can pay 1 black and 2 colorless to put this into the field on this side, and it would just shift kind of in the chase. So the reason why you play this card is for this side. The light side, I guess, is like technically can come in handy if your opponent sides something like the arena that does 100 to everything and you want to protect your tokens. But this is the side you play this card for. This has always been one of my favorite cards. I think this card is insane. It says when it enters the field, you destroy a 2-drop or less cost Resonator. And that's really, really crazy because one of the biggest threats to this deck is something like Tsukiyomi that doesn't let you use activates, so your mana dorks are all dead. Not to mention, like, just in general, like, having a 3-drop that destroys a 2-drop is very tempo-y, especially if you're ramping. You're pretty much always a turn ahead of them, and being able to slow them down is really, really, really good. And then the really amazing part about this card is it says other J/Resonators you control gain 200 attack and 0 defense, and so all your tokens are now 300 attack. So while you're like progressing your game state, your tokens are 300, being able to beat down your opponent or trade with their monsters. And then if you J-activate and you happen to have one of these on the field, excuse me, you get the 400 from that and the 200 from this, making all of your tokens 700, which is like even scarier. And then if you have this on the field and you summon a Pricia, her attack is stronger, so they battle with more damage. If you summon a Christy, it's the same situation. It comes in with more attack, so it deals more damage. It's just really, really good. Like, this card is incredible. I'm playing the black just for this, and I think it's definitely worth it. And then Vampire Hunter Christy. This card's kind of like the same as all the other torrent cards. If you've used 2 cards that turn, you get an additional effect. The effect is to make this card in another J/Resonator battle This card is like my most hated card now, like just in the entire format. I was playtesting with a friend last night, and he was using this deck, and I was using Grim Jr. And I kind of wanted to make sure I had a good version of this to post either today or tomorrow. I might make 2 videos today, but the deck is actually really good too. I'm really excited for it. But every time he would have this on the field, I just had to play so differently because at any point she has an effect where you can pay 1 green and she gains 200 until the end of turn, and she can only play this if Fiethsing's your ruler. And like with all the mana on draw, they just go like 1 mana, 1 Sacred Elf, 1 Melfi to give it 6/6, and so she's a 16/16. And then they recover and they have like 6 stones and 3 mana dorks, and they go swing for 16. And if you don't block, they're just gonna go pump, 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 and then you take like 3,000 and you just die. And I'm just like, this card is crazy. Like the fact that it destroys something when she enters, a 4-drop 1,000 that does that plus can get stronger is absolutely insane. Like this card is like it's my favorite card like in the deck probably, but I hate playing against it because it's so strong. I've even been considering like in every light deck I play now, I'm going to side like 3 Betavirs just because this and Captain Hook are like really like strong this format. And a lot of cards seem to be over 1,000 again. And so I think Betavir might see more play. But this card is absolutely insane. Like I almost rather have this than Hook because I don't have to worry about the blue for it either. So next up is Hook though. He is still really good. If you just get rid of your opponent's special stones, they just lose. It's just such a good card. Ramping to this makes it so you're kind of cheating it into play. The only deck I think I like playing this in that doesn't kind of get it in early is Grim Jr. because he searches a lot. So you can like search a lot of them and just keep following up with them so your opponent just gets annoyed. So late game it's just like they're just getting sick of getting Captain Hook over and over again. But other than that, if you can't cheat this in with like a Shion or with like a ramp engine, I don't think it's worth just summoning for 5. Like once again, outside of this, it just feels very like weird. But in this deck, like being able to just go tap Sacred Elf, tap Melfi, pay 3 and summon Hook is just crazy. Even if you're just bouncing your monsters to attack with like Christy for like infinite damage, it's just a really good card. So that's pretty much all the Resonators though. The rest of the deck is actually in a really strange way like what makes it so consistent. So I play 4 Whisper from the Wind. This card I like completely brushed off at first, but then realized it's like secretly the best card ever. So this card is a 1-drop green that says you reveal the top card of your deck, and then this turn it costs 1 less green to cast. So let's say if like, let me put this here because I know Sacred Elf is on the top. You actually want to activate this only during your turn on your draw phase, like before you recover. It's the best way. But let's say you activate this card and you reveal Sacred Elf. This turn Sacred Elf costs 1 green less, so it's free. And then when you play that card, it of course triggers the token because you played this and this turn. But like what makes it so crazy is like it says draw a card, so you're drawing the card that you reveal. So not only are you gonna get the torrent effect if it's a torrent card, but like that's a 1-drop green that just says draw a card at instant speed. So just to clarify, this is pretty much like Upstart Goblin from Yu-Gi-Oh! You just get to draw a card and then just keep going. Not to mention it's going to trigger all the effects and makes them cost less. And then following up with that, we have 4 Rewriting Laws, which is also Upstart Goblin from Yu-Gi-Oh! So you play 2 mana and you produce, you draw a card and then you recover 2 stones, and your stones this turn can produce any mana, which just also helps with Captain Hook and all the other cards that have color. But it's pretty much meant to be where you activate this, you recover 2 stones, so it was free, and then the next card you play will trigger the torrent effect because you've used 2 cards. But that's 8 cards in your deck that like pretty much, this is free because it doesn't cost anything because you recover unless it gets countered. And then the other one you can do on your draw so easily because you have like Melfies and Sacred Elves and stuff. So you never actually use the mana like during your main phase for it. It just kind of happens during your draw. So you have 8 cards that let you go through your deck, 8 cards that help you trigger all the other effects, and it pretty much gives you a 32 card deck with 4 ofs to have like super consistency. Like that's crazy. Like every time I think about it, I'm just like, this deck has a lot of drawing. There's 8 of these, 3 of the cats. That's over like almost like a third of your deck going straight just to drawing. It's like a little over a fourth, I guess, but it's just, that's really good. The fact that it also like helps you make all the mana and the Whisper card. There's been times where I've whispered into a Rewriting Laws, and then so what you can do is like, if you have, let's say, 2 stones and a Sacred Elf, and you use a Sacred Elf for Whisper, and you draw Rewriting Laws, this turn, Rewriting Laws only cost 1, not 2. So you can float both of your stones, activate Rewriting Laws for 1 using one of the floating mana, and then still recover 2 stones because that's what Rewriting Laws says. So you still have the 1 floating green in the air, and then now you have 2 stones, and then like the Sacred Elf you used to use Whisper. So like by turn 2 you can have like 4 mana. And I'm just like, that's crazy. Like you just go Christy and then they lose. Like this deck is really strong. Like it's just really, it has so many plays. There's so many different like ways to go about it. And like, yeah, it's really simple. So I like this deck a lot for beginners too. It's just a strong deck that doesn't seem impossibly hard to learn, but it just has a lot of interesting plays. And then 3 Wall of Wind. This card is really good right now because of Energize. Even if you go second now, you can just go Summon Sacred Elf, hold this. The second they use their play, you just Wall of Wind. If you go second and they go like summon their most important card turn 1, you just Energize and Wall of Wind. It's just so good. Like it's only dead late game, but that's why I only played 3. I never want to double up on this card. If you see it early, it's great. If you see it like within like the first 3 turns, I should say, it's really good. And then after that, it's not so great. But like you just have so many other plays, it stops mattering. But Wall of Wind's always going to be one of the better counters. And then 4 Seal of Wind and Light. I mentioned this in the beginning. It's just your like negate everything card. This card literally just counters any spells. So any monster, any magic, any spell card or chant just gets completely negated. I keep getting asked this question actually, so I guess I'll clarify. For Wall of Wind and both this card, if a card says cancel target spell, it applies to both, so Resonators and regular spells. So Resonators are summon spells, and every other card in the chase is a normal spell. So Regalias are normal spells in the chase, Additions are normal spells in the chase. So if a card says cancel target normal spell, it refers to everything that's not a Resonator. And if it says cancel target summon spell, it means only Resonators and nothing else. If it says cancel target spell, like Wall of Wind and Seal, it's just everything. They all fall into the category of spells, so it just stops everything. And then just 1 Wind Secluded Refuge. I wanted to play this because I like playing this if I have green. It's just really good because there's been a time where I wasn't playing this and I deactivated Fiethsing to attack for game with all the tokens. And the second I attacked with the first one, they used Black Moonbeam on Fiethsing, and I was just kind of like, oh, right, that exists. I'm totally dead now. Like, my complete play just went down the drain, and I'm not winning this game anymore. So it's really important to be able to protect Fiethsing. It's one of those situations, like, if that happens, like, it's kind of like, you know, it happened, like, that 1 Black Moonbeam for your 1 Wind Secluded, you didn't have it, they had it, it's not a big deal. But if I can use the 1 slot to it, why not? It's not going to be bad. It draws a card on enter. It can trigger torrent effects, which is really good too. So it's not a terrible card. I wouldn't like super focus on this because you don't really deactivate unless you really want to push. But it's always nice to have the 1. So thanks a ton for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. I want to get the starter deck rulers kind of out of the way first for any of the people that are new getting into the game. I know it's kind of like really hard to find information for Force of Will and like our YouTube channels for like, I just literally noticed, you guys can't see it, but like I have to show this. There's like a sneaky little elf in her hat. I've never noticed that. Is it in her hat? Yeah, it's in her hat. Sorry, like I just noticed that. Like literally, who is this? This is literally like Gil Lapis' spy, and I need to like tell the world. This is just really creepy. Sorry, I have like the mind of a squirrel. I get distracted like super easily, but yeah, I know like a lot of new people are getting into the game and it's hard to find information. When I first started like over a year ago, it was just impossible to find anything. So I really hope this kind of content really helps like the beginner people. I know the more like really active people that play the game actively, maybe just like be looking for the list in the description or something. So the videos are kind of catered kind of to the newer people, but I hope it's helping everyone in general. But yeah, I want to get the starter deck rulers out first just to be able to help you guys out a lot. But if you have any questions, of course, always ask in the comment section below. I always try to get back to everyone comments, but I work quite a lot, so sometimes I never get to reply to everyone as much as I would hope. But I do try my best, so hopefully you guys can feel comfortable with leaving any questions. And definitely subscribe to the channel because I don't sound this awful all the time. I'm just really, really sick all the time. So hopefully you guys can bear with it, and I'll definitely catch you guys next time.